Welcome to Portraits. I'm Kayon Vaz. It was Winston Churchill who said, "We shape our buildings, thereafter they shape us." On today's show, we meet a man who for over the past 50 years has helped to shape Jamaica's landscape. Not only has he played a role in the physical development of our country, but has also helped to create some of Jamaica's most memorable landmarks. Marvin D. Goodman is one of Jamaica's most outstanding architects and has dedicated the better part of the last 50 years designing some of Jamaica's most well-known locales. A few of his major works include the master plan and architecture for the redevelopment of Port Royal, the embassies of France and Mexico, the Petroleum Corporation of Jamaica building, and resorts such as Goblin Hill and Hedonism II. But his most famed accomplishment, which he did in collaboration with Mr. Lloyd Shearer, is the official residence of the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Jamaica House. Portraits presents Mr. Marvin D. Goodman. Mr. Goodman, thank you so much for joining us for Portraits here at the Institute of Jamaica.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Before we discuss your many accomplishments, I would like for you to take us back to the early years. Describe for me Marvin Goodman in Miami Beach.
Well, when I grew up in Miami Beach, it was a very small town except for a couple of months during the winter. One high school, a couple of elementary schools, everybody knew everybody. And there was a tremendous amount of building going on all the time. But what I used to do with all my friends, we used to play basketball in the park on weekends and spend the rest of the time on the beach. and it was a very carefree existence, very safe. Everybody used to walk everywhere. So it was a great pleasure.
When did you realize you wanted to become an architect?
I have to tell you, where I grew up, you had a choice. You had to be a doctor, a lawyer, architect or something. So I didn't like the sight of blood, couldn't want to read so much lawyer, so I said, why not be an architect? And it was, as I say, there was so much building. It was interesting, but I really wasn't sure if I had any talent because I would never got involved with art or anything. So in fact, originally I set out to do architectural engineering. And one of the only schools that was offering that was the University of Texas at Austin. So I applied and I went there to study architectural engineering. And a couple of days before the school started, I met somebody in the architecture school. He says, don't worry about it, they'll teach you.
Okay.
So when I applied, I changed to architecture. So I cannot tell you, it was one long childish desire.
To an architect. While studying, did you ever experience any doubts to say, maybe this is not the career path that I should take?
I cannot agree that I was thinking that much during all that period. It really was very pleasant being at university. And the architecture was very interesting, nice people in the class. So it was of all the various courses, but also at the University of Florida, one had to take a whole series of other courses, general courses. So it wasn't like you were totally focused on that.
So you were all-rounded?
Yeah.
Who are some of the mentors that guided you to be the man that you are today?
Well, I think early on, I was very attracted to the architecture of Frank Lloyd Wright. And I've remained that way. You know, his idea of buildings being part of the landscape. Don't build on top of the hill, build in the hill. And the incorporation of landscaping and the kinds of spaces. And I was very impressed then, and I remain impressed after all these years. I was less impressed by what's called the international style, which is all just concrete and glass. I find that a little bit cold.
Mm. So you have to incorporate a bit of nature.
Very much so. And living in Jamaica or in Miami.
Gives you that opportunity.
You have to.
Yes. Is mentorship something that you hold dear?
Not really. I would read a lot, but I don't recall having long discussions with mentors, as it were. Just learn by watching and looking.
As a writer myself, I know that I'm inspired by conversations, I'm inspired by people in order to formulate characters. What would you say inspires you as an architect?
Truthfully, it's more, they call it the built environment, and I think it's more that is the land, the trees, the views, the requirements of the people. In fact, that's one of the things I find most interesting, is you take, and the more complicated, the more I enjoy it, trying to take all the various things, how you get from here to there, what you want to do. If it's a house, how do you get from the bathroom to the kitchen?
Functionality.
The functionality of it. And then how to fit it into something that is aesthetically good looking. And the truth of it is that, as I've come to realize, buildings have a big effect on people. And I've met people who have lived in houses I designed years ago, and they'll come and tell me how much they enjoyed living in them, which is great because I was trying to do that, and in some cases it worked.
Let's touch a bit on your family, your parents. What influence did they have on you in terms of, their career path that you've chosen?
It was interesting. Both my parents came from Poland. They were immigrants to the United States. But they were determined when they came that they were going to become Americans, so they spoke perfectly, no accent. And I think what they imbued on is the necessity to work hard, do things, be straightforward.
Do your best.
Do your best. But they didn't sort of say, be this or be that or something. Like, they were just encouraging you. Is that what you want to do? Go ahead.
After the break, Marvin Goodman discusses life in Jamaica during the 1960s, as well as his role in the creation of the official residence of the Prime Minister of Jamaica. The year is 1958, and you were based in Paris, France, as an assistant engineer working on the UNESCO building. Describe for me Marvin Goodman at that time. Is he the eager young man ready to take the architectural world by storm? What was going on?
That was about the fourth year of construction, and everybody was tired and bored and angry. So I came there ready to do anything for everybody. And it was an opportunity. One of my responsibilities was to be in charge of what they call the gift room program, because all the various countries would contribute a room or the furnishing of a room. So I was in charge. And my job meant I had to meet with all these people and make sure what they wanted to be done had to be done. One of the people, for example, I don't know if you've heard of Isamu Noguchi, very famous sculptor. He was designing a Japanese garden for UNESCO. Beautiful garden. By the time I got there, everybody was so angry at him. Nobody would talk to him. I would do anything for him. You want that? I'll go there, I'll buy you anything. So I became his assistant. And so here I am dealing with somebody like that. And really, I was present there meeting with really the greats of the world, the architects of the building itself, the engineer, world famous people. And even there was, for example, I don't know if you've heard of him, it's Hans Wegner, a very famous Danish furniture maker. So he was doing all the work for the government of Denmark. He hated Paris, so every time I would sit and talk to him, he'd complain to me. I'm ready to complain away. I'm just happy to be in your presence because. So from that point of view, and it was, the things that were being done in that building were just magnificent. So I had a chance to meet everybody, to do all sorts of different things, talk to the contractor, talk to the architects, talk to the suppliers, talk to everybody. And it was, and in retrospect, the world's greatest job.
So now, fast forward, you've begun your private practice, your architectural private firm in Jamaica, 1960. Describe the atmosphere at that time.
After I left UNESCO, I came to New York. and to explain to them all the wonderful things I had done. They said, forget about it. How many of these kind of things have you done? How many stairs have you done? So it really was a real letdown. So for various reasons, I got a phone call from somebody I had met about 6 months before. Said, would you like to come to Jamaica to finish a hotel? So I said, okay. And got on a plane. And when I came to Jamaica, this was, at that time, it was called the Marrakesh Hotel. Became the Playboy, now it's Beaches Boscobel. And there I was doing very much the same thing that I was doing at UNESCO. I was in charge of construction, I was designing the buildings, I was talking to the workmen. The owner would say one morning, let's design a Brazilian nightclub. And I would say, okay. So I designed the Brazilian nightclub. The next day we started building it. It was really quite an extraordinary situation there in the middle. Well, it was near Boscobel, which is really country. Yes. And it was a simpler time. I was thinking, when we had a payday, hundreds of guys would line up. The table was covered with money. No guards, no nothing. The guys would come up, read their name. You're entitled to 3 pounds, 10 pence, or 6. Count it out and give it to them. No, nothing. I mean, that is, I'm not sure if that would happen right now.
Would you say that you fell in love with the island?
I think immediately I felt at home, and I got on very easily with everybody. I mean, I used to get invited when the foreman would have a dinner. I got invited with the foreman. Then I would meet the owners, then I would meet the various people. So it was including having lunch with Elizabeth Taylor when she came there and stayed in a penthouse that I had designed. So it was, again, a remarkable thing. So I found that is the kind of thing I like to do. Not just one thing, but to do a bunch of things and take a lot of responsibility.
Speaking of one of your many architectural pieces, Jamaica House is the official residence of the Prime Minister. How does it feel to have contributed such a notable residence?
It's really wonderful. As I mentioned, what it was a competition. And Lloyd Shearer, who was an architect at that time, although he's since died, he asked me if I would join him and we would put in an entry. So then we won the competition, and then we built it. It really was, I think, an incredible honor to do something, drive by and say,
That's me. And just to mention, you have done some other notable landmarks. You're looking at the Port Antonio, the development of Port Royal, Kingston Harbor, the popular 5-star hotels that you've actually designed, and the tourist destinations. What does it feel like to see, from concept to reality?
Well, one like that is hedonism.
Hedonism.
Yes. What a great thing. We started with a phone call. Say, the government wants to build a hotel for John S. Go and do it. And again, I ended up doing everything, including buying the horses. I found somebody at Navy Island who was a world-famous boat designer, and he designed the boats, and in fact helped build them. We designed the staff uniforms. We chose everything. It was, again, the type of thing, did in the disco. I think it was just great. We did this, I think it was one of the first times where the music and the beat and the lighting were all going at the same time. So that was, again, a great experience. You go down there, and again, in the middle of nowhere. That was the second place that was ever built down in Negril. And I like to tell you, and I'll tell you, it's apparently the most successful hotel in the Caribbean. It's been full for how many years? Many years.
Are you particular about the kinds of projects that you...
Yeah, ones that pay fees.
Whenever a client comes to you and they're kind of explaining that concept, and you would say, not something for Marvin Goodman.
I haven't done that. I mean, well, maybe once or twice, but mostly that's what I like about Jamaica. In most countries, if you're an architect, if you become an expert on, say, operating rooms, that's what you do for another 10 or 20 years, or you do K-12 schools, or you get to be an expert in something. Where in Jamaica, there's not enough building like that, so you cannot become a specialist. So I've worked on healthcare, tourism, residential, stores, banks.
Restoration projects.
Restoration.
Of all the projects that you've worked on, which one did you find was more fulfilling for you?
Well, I think one, in looking at it, because it was really a breakthrough, the PCJ building, because it was the first one saying, let's talk about energy. And I was very lucky when I got the job. I went to a library and said, what is this thing about energy? And I picked out a book, How to Do Energy Efficient Buildings. I read it and I said, this is great. I called the author, and he became my consultant. And he was not only the most knowledgeable, but the nicest person. He knew how to do everything. So with that, we really did something, I think. I see now buildings that are being touted as energy efficient. We did that 20 odd years ago, because this guy was really about the world's leading expert. So he led me to do it. So it was, even now I think I'm very, very proud of that one.
Was there ever a time you had any regrets on passing on a project? An opportunity came to you and you passed on that project and you said, I should have.
I'm trying to think of one like that. Not really, because I didn't really pass on many.
So it's something came to you and you said, you know what? This is what it's about, and I'm going to.
I found there's always seemed to have been something. Either it was a great piece of land, or it was a great owner, or some other circumstances came out. So a question of, making lemonade out of lemons, but there was always seemed to be an opportunity to do something very interesting.
You're a multi-award winning architect, and of course you received the Silver Musgrave Award in 1999. What was that experience like for you?
It was a great honor. I'll tell you, in the commendation, I think about it many times. They said, famous for integrity and imagination. And I cannot, even now, I can't think of anything that would be more nicer to have had somebody say about me, And so it really was a great honor to be here.
How important is integrity for you?
I think it's everything. And I think, and I really have to give credit to my wife on this, because when I grew up in Miami Beach, integrity and truth and all that were variable items. But my wife, who is Jamaican, she has no misunderstanding. There's truth and there's not truth. And as a result of that, I have found that it has really worked out very, very well to be really honest. I was about to say as possible. No, honest and to be truthful. And it really has paid off, I think.
When we return, Marvin Goodman tells us about the love of his life, his wife, Rosalie Goodman, and the role she played in the development of their award-winning firm, Marvin D. Goodman and Associates. Mr. Goodman, we're going to speak a bit about Rosalie, your wife. How did you two meet?
Well, I had actually been in Jamaica running around for quite a few years. I think I was reaching a point of exhaustion, and I think mothers were refusing to allow me to speak to their daughters. Anyhow, I went to a party, and by chance, Rosalie, who actually was living in Europe and only coming out to Jamaica to teach swimming so she could go back to Europe, happened to be at the party. And we just met and we danced, and I told a few jokes and she laughed, and that's a perfect...
perfect combination. Do you both share similar passions?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's quite extraordinary how much I love France from my spate. She loves France. In fact, she studied at the Sorbonne, and she was au pair there with a woman who we're still friendly with. And so we both have that. And also, she's very much interested in education. And in fact, she was the one who started Hillel Academy. In fact, which we just went to the 45th anniversary. It all started in my living room when Elie Mantelan, who became the Minister of Education, walked in and he said, Rosalie, start a school. I'll see you.
Yes, you take care of everything.
Take care, and she did. And then after she ran that and started that, then a few years later, I got involved with Jamaica House Basic School for Beverly Manley. And we asked Rosalie if she would help. So she spent 9 years with running the education at Jamaica House Basic School. So she's really done a tremendous job with early childhood education.
What role did Rosalie play in the development for Marvin D and Associates?
Everything.
Everything.
No, she really runs the business, and she organizes things, and I mean, it really would have been impossible without her, and it's worked out very, very well.
Your firm is known for energy efficiency and, of course, green designs. Why is this so important for you?
First of all, when we talked about it, because energy seemed to be an interesting thing to do, and when I was doing PCJ and all, but it's turned out now that people are finally coming to realize that the things that save energy also make people healthier if you're in a hospital, learn better if you're in a school. So they have all these other sort of benefits that you come from energy. And also, it used to be when I used to talk to people about energy, they say, no, forget about it. Now, when they get their JPS bills, I don't say it to them, they say it to me, because they get sticker shock. And where it used to be, I don't care about ventilation, I don't care about light. If it doesn't work, I'll stick it in a window air conditioner. Now they're taking them out of the walls. And so I think people are coming to realize how important it is, and that they cannot almost not exist without it, and also how much better it makes you feel. So talk about one of these win-win-win situations.
Yes. You've been an eyewitness to the different architectural designs in Jamaica. What are your thoughts? Do you think we have made good decisions in terms of our infrastructure?
Well, when architecture started in Jamaica, like a lot of places, they said anything that's old is bad, let's start the new, let's copy what's over there. Only in the last, 10 years, 15 years, they say, wait a minute, some of those old buildings are really quite beautiful. And they're quite beautiful because they work, and they're human, and they let in the light, and there's a place to sit, and it has nice characters. So I think now there is a move towards doing something that is much more, call it Jamaican, or call it tropical, or subtropical, which is very good. And I think if you say we made mistakes, I think it was following what people have done all over the world. Make the roads wider, make the buildings taller, cut down the trees, and various things. But I think people are becoming much more attuned now to nature, to energy. As I say, I think we owe a debt to JPS by raising our bills beyond anybody's capacity to pay. They've made us focus on doing the right thing.
What is your leisure time like? What do you do in your downtime?
I drive to Port Antonio, sit by the sea. I don't play as much tennis as I used to. I used to do that, do some walking, swimming a lot. I really like nature. I do a lot of reading. If you ever come to the house, I'll show you bookcase after bookcase. I just like to read.
Okay, one of your favorite books?
I don't want to, I've read a lot of classics saying I am required to read classics. I mean, that's part of what you... And then when I read it, I remember reading War and Peace as an assignment to myself. And then I found this is the most wonderful book that I think I've ever read. It's no question why it is such a world, so famous. And also when I was in Paris, I used to go to a cafe near the Sorbonne, and they had on the wall there, they had these books by Proust, Remembrance of Things Past. So I picked up one, you start reading it in Paris, We're Better. And I became tremendously enamored of it, because when I would read it, you'd look around and you would understand what he was talking about, because it was all there.
You've dedicated your life locally and internationally to architecture. What legacy would you like to leave behind?
I'm working on some things now, which I think, both in education. Well, I think Hillel is, as a point, people really learn very well. But I think I'm getting involved with things like some hospitals. And I believe there's a chance to have them really be breakthroughs of Jamaican, tropical, healthy places where people don't go to get sick, but where people go to get well. And also I'm working on some parks, and they are just so incredibly important as you start researching, and you realize how athletics is so important to communities, bringing communities together, having people, places for people to go. I mean, I heard once a talk on BBC, and the guy says, you know something, poor people are just as stressed or more stressed than rich people, but they got nowhere to go. They have no parks, they have no place to play. So I think that's an incredibly important thing for Jamaica, to have these parks where people can relax and go and meet, and where old people can look after the kids and have a place to sit and have places to meet and get married and do things. So I think that there's some things that I'm working on now that I believe I really feel will be a legacy.
After the break, Marvin Goodman meets budding architect Sean Berry.
Sean, welcome to our offices. It's a pleasure to have you as a student to see how the real world operates.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. It is a rare feat for us as architecture student, well, me as an architecture student really, to be in such an architectural office as yours, Mr. Goodman, and I really appreciate it.
It's fine. I gather you have some questions you'd like to ask.
Yes, I do. What do you define as a successful design?
I have it written down somewhere. It's something that adds to the built environment, works very, very well for the people who are going to use it, is in most cases commercially successful, whether it's a private house or a business, and gives me a sense of creative self-expression and hopefully make some money for everybody.
Would you say that the Caribbean has an architectural identity?
It had at one time. In the 60s and early 70s, like everywhere else in the world, there was the decision that everything old was bad and we ought to start doing everything new and we got to copy everybody else and forget about what we used to do. But happily that attitude has changed. And I think now people are trying to recapture what was the identity, which was buildings that worked with the environment. You know, those things that natural light, cross ventilation, comfortable to sit in, views of nature and all that. So I think that is coming back. We went through a bad period, but we share that with the rest of the world.
What would be your most valuable contribution to architecture?
Well, I think just, you know, your previous question about what is something that fits into the environment, which relates to the way we live, the way our weather, to the good things about Jamaica or the Caribbean. In other words, we don't have heat, but it's warm. We need breezes. We have great advantage of a lot of natural light and places that are comfortable for the people. And I think I've tried to do that in everything I've done, whether it's office buildings, private homes, apartment houses, or clinics. I've tried to do that in all of them because a lot of those things work for everything.
What advice would you have for our upcoming architecture student who has just finished fourth year?
I have two. One, go out and walk around and sketch. Go look at buildings, go look at parks, go look at markets, and sketch. Don't take pictures. Pictures don't tell you anything. When you sketch, you have to understand, you have to see the way they work. Also gives you a chance to see the people interacting with the building. Do they fit? Do they look comfortable? Do they not look comfortable? That's the most important thing, because when you have to really look at buildings, it'll give you a much better idea on how to design them. And the other one I would give you, which is as important, is to travel. Go and look at places around the world. The easiest place to do it is in Europe because it's small, and also they really look after students. They have cheap places to live, cheap places to eat. You can buy a pass on the trains and travel all over Europe for one price. They're very good to students, and there you will see everything from 500 years old to 300 to yesterday, and they're all in a very compact area. And I think I would absolutely recommend it. And I'll give you one example, how you may have seen pictures of a lot of buildings. I'm sure you've seen pictures of the Parthenon in Greece. Well, I did too, but I then saw it. I was lucky enough that when I was in the army, I used to be able to fly for nothing. The Parthenon, when you see it in place, you cannot imagine what it's like from pictures. And seeing the proportions, seeing the way it was built, seeing the way people walk around, you can't top that experience. So I would say two things: sketch and travel.
All right. So you would say it's better to experience a space instead of just seeing a space?
Absolutely. One of the experience, let's face it, architecture has to do with people. And one important thing is just don't go there and take a picture of it at one time and there's nobody there. Go at a time and see it like whether it's an office building, whether it's a shop, whether it's a market. See how it works with the people in it, how they do it. Very often you look at magazines and they're pictures of things that no human being has ever set foot in it. There's no books, there's no magazines, there's no humans. You really want to see how people interact with the buildings, because that's what architecture is as opposed to buildings.
Thank you very much for answering my questions. I also have some pieces I would really love for you to see and give me your views on them.
It'd be a pleasure. As you might know, I do that from time to time up at the School of Architecture. And it's always nice to see what the up-and-comers are doing. I will try to be as polite as possible.
Good day, Mr. Goodman. This is my presentation on Panama, Casco Vale. Casco Vale is a World Heritage Site currently in Panama. It is one of the oldest cities in Panama City, and it is to be renovated and revitalized as a National Heritage Site. Therefore, we have to follow certain stipulations to keep in par with the entire layout of Casco Vale and not come out of the colonial style that it is in. We opt to design a community center within Casco Vale because we saw the need for a community center. It is the most influential structure that would be placed in Casco Vale as a heritage site because of the lack of social spaces for the people of Casco Vale. Because it has become a tourist destination, it seems as if the people of Casco Vale are being forced out. Therefore, we have designed a structure basically to house and facilitate social needs of the people of Casco Vale. Here we have the presentation of the site plan and concepts of the site plan. Well, zero boundary lot lines, and we basically have three faces. The third face is facing over a structure beneath us. So we have that vista towards our central park. Here we have that only good view space, seeing that everything is a zero lot boundary line. So everything is surrounding our site, so we barely have good vistas out. So I opted to push towards that open space here. That is the only real relief space for us to really relate to from our site. So in here now we have that little social space that would become a node or a meeting place for individuals to gather, meet me here, and we all enter into the community center. The main aspect or aspects that I took from Casco Vale is the sense of symmetry in buildings. The main detail, seeing that it is also a tropical country, they make use of a lot of courtyards to help ventilate spaces and keep individuals cool. Therefore, the main thing in my design would be that central courtyard. So everything wraps around the central courtyard. Everything links to the central courtyard. If you need to move from one space to the next, you enter into that courtyard space, we move on to another space. So in my program here, I have spaces for residents, a relief center for residents, a social space being the courtyard in the center. Everything to the front of the structure relates back out, so you make use of that view, that only real view we have. And we have educational facilities as well as recreational facilities for the people of Casco Vale. Here I opt to relate back to Casco Vale by showing the construction details of many of the structures. You don't really see how people construct things, you only see the finished product, but showing the detail of the materials they used in layers continuously going up. It's a repetition. So it would show for a good heritage site to really bring out those details in how it was constructed then and how it's constructed now. I have images of the social spaces here on the base. So you see all the social spaces, comfortable social spaces, spaces to be used for meetings, discussions, anything of a social aspect. Here are my concept models showing forces, edges, and memory. So these are the driving forces throughout my development, actually. And as you can see, my elevations and sections through the structure showing cross ventilation and the courtyard and how people use the spaces initially.
Well, I'll say right off, this is an excellent presentation. It's understandable, it's clear, you can see what you're trying to do. It's very, very good, and I congratulate you because not all the ones I see are like this. Having said that, I have a few comments. Is one, as you can see from my own places, there's not enough green around. It's very hard, and there's no reason why you can't have more green because it's good for people. I like your idea of using the roof. I think that's a wonderful unused space in most places, and I think it's great to be a wonderful place to have trees up there where people could really relax day and night. Another thing that is missing, and this comes up every time I go up to the school, where is north? Well, north is very important because the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and it really, everything you do in terms of glare, in terms of ventilation, everything really depends on the orientation. So that's very important. Another thing which is it's something that I feel in the tropics, windows should have overhangs. If you'll notice, the building alongside it has a balcony overhang and all that. The modern day, they don't have overhangs, which I think is a big mistake because the sun blasts in through the windows, making it very hot. And the reason there were overhangs in the old buildings, because they didn't have to think, they just looked outside and said, we've got to shade these windows. So I think that's a small thing. So I think, but your courtyard is excellent because people can orient themselves. And I think, although it's not obvious from your drawings, I think people would find it a space where they could spend time and then go up to the roof and spend some more time. So all in all, really, Sean, it's a very good presentation.
I like the fact that you brought up the windows. The issue with the windows were that the buildings being so tall and being in such close proximity to each other, the buildings actually shaded this aspect of my structure. So this initially you're looking at now is the north side. Okay. So I already received shade from this structure here and that structure.
You're reading my mind. Well done. Okay, I'm glad you thought about that because that's very, very important. Very often, modern architects simply just put glass on all four facades and don't worry at all about the sun and glare.
Yeah. Even another issue that I opt to resolve with my structure is that with this breezeway here and the western sun, the reflection of the sun helps to, off the main wall here, helps to, bounce light into the structure, maximizing our natural light, reducing my dependency on electricity.
No, but and again, you've made beginnings for using the roof, but I think you ought to exploit that because what a wonderful space. I'm sure the buildings around there are quite low. It'd be a wonderful space, and that with the atrium in the middle would make it really a nice place for people to spend time. I hope your professor gave you an A.
So here's my models representing the building itself, and concept models from beginning. I had like 5 of these. Over time they are destroyed. And we also explored structure.
And that structure is similar to the way the other buildings in the area are built. Well, very straightforward, post and beam and all that. Great roof. Use it.
American businessman Jim Rohn said, "Whatever good things we build end up building us." Marvin Goodman's work stands testament to his integrity and legacy, and is a beacon to young architects such as Sean Berry. On behalf of my production team and the Institute of Jamaica, as well as my stylist Sandy McPherson of Sandy's Selections, I am Kean Vaz. This has been Portraits.
Wardrobe provided by Sandy Selections, Shop 8, Southdale Plaza. Portraits of the Guests created by Stacey Ann Hyde. www.staceyandhydeartworks.blogspot.com